Sorry, I apologize. Let's just, okay, we're going to go now to Oregon. Actually, right now, we're awaiting a decision out of Oregon where a judge could rule at any moment on the actions of federal officers in Portland's protest zone. We don't have that decision yet. It might come into us in the next hour or so. It follows a volatile night on the protest line where the city's mayor was tear gassed by federal officers dressed in tactical gear as he stood with demonstrators. You see him there standing in front of the fence that protected a courthouse. But Mayor Ted Wheeler's attendance drew anger from some in the crowd who shouted for his resignation. Last night marked the 55th straight night of demonstrations. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin is in Portland for us this morning. Aaron, good to have you with us. So hours before last night's protest began, the mayor signed an order passed by the city council banning police from cooperating with federal officers. Did there seem to be any change in the way the evening played out?
Well, Eamon, we do know that Portland police did declare a riot over Twitter pertaining to the activities of protesters in the nearby Justice Center. But for the most part, the police continuing, the Portland police continuing their sort of hands-off approach that we've seen over the last few days here in Portland as protesters turned out at the federal courthouse to have their say and to rail against the presence of federal agents. Right now, the situation is pretty calm. Let me just let the camera pan over and show you around. You can see the projectiles, the missiles that were launched over this fence in the overnight hours towards the courthouse, towards the agents. The agents responded with tear gas. Ted Wheeler, the mayor, was here, and he's very controversial because he is also the police commissioner, and many of these protesters are out here to protest overreach on the part of Portland police, including Jennifer Christensen. She was actually arrested on Monday night during Monday night's protests. She was charged with a misdemeanor felony, but she told me that she was here to have her say she wants to see police reform within the city. Meanwhile, we are waiting for this court decision from this very same federal court that heard just yesterday arguments from Oregon's Attorney General for a motion for a temporary restraining order to stop federal agents from making what she argues are unlawful arrests of protesters here in Portland. That decision could come by the end of the week. Amen.
All right, NBC's Aaron McLaughlin, thank you very much for that. I want to bring into the conversation now Oregon Congressman Earl Blumenauer, who represents Portland and sits on the Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. As we mentioned there, we're waiting for a federal judge to weigh in on the argument from your state's attorney general, who says that it's unconstitutional to use police state tactics against protesters. Yesterday, that judge sounded skeptical. He said police use unmarked vehicles all the time, and lawful arrests are always terrifying to the individuals being arrested. Do you believe what's happening in your district is unconstitutional?
I think it is. It's certainly pushing the limits. There's a difference between what happens in terms of ordinary policing in communities and when you have federal agents anonymously come in, unwanted, unprepared, unwelcome, against the wishes of the local community and the local authorities, the governor, the mayor. Nobody wanted them there. We were working hard. We've had challenges in Portland. Make no mistake. And some of the demonstrations had activities that were illegal. We absolutely decry that. We are not in favor of that at all. But the community working to try and de-escalate, try and deal with these real challenges, all of a sudden the federal government comes in and starts acting in a very aggressive manner, making the situation worse. Many people saw the account of one of my constituents who went up and just asked one of the federal officials, a simple question about what they were doing, and he was beaten. His wrist was broken. I mean, these activities are making it worse, not better. I think we're seeing a test run for what Donald Trump is going to do elsewhere. We saw it in Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C., where for a photo op with a picture of a Bible, peaceful protesters were moved out, and this is the same thing on steroids. And
so let me pick up on that point if I can, Congressman. You brought up President Trump here and what he plans to do as a test run in Portland and other cities. He vowed yesterday to send federal law enforcement officers into cities with a high crime rate, a little different from what's happening in Portland. But what's your message to those cities who will be dealing with a federal presence as well?
Well, we've already seen many of those mayors make it clear they don't want help like this. Work with the local officials when necessary. We don't need to have another battleground. I mean, for heaven's sakes, if you ask those officials what they'd like help with, they'd like help dealing with the coronavirus and the pandemic. They'd like help dealing with the president doing his job, which he was asleep at the switch for 4 months as the pandemic rages. Help us with the underlying areas of discontent in terms of homelessness and access to health care. But doing this, opening up another front as a photo op, I just think is outrageous.
All right, Congressman Earl Blumenauer, sir, thank you so much for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks to all of you for watching this hour of MSNBC Live. I'm Ayman Mohideen. After a quick break, more on the unemployment crisis and the very latest news on Capitol Hill with my colleague, Chris Jansen.
I'm going to weigh in on what was just said to give you my thoughts about a lot of these mayors and a lot of these politicians that have been swindled, that have been blackmailed, that have been bought off in them holding down the positions that they hold, regardless whether they be in one category or the other pertaining to our law enforcement. I think the reason why that they don't want the feds coming in is because it dismantles their normal routine. And whenever I say their normal routine, I'm talking about how that just about 98% of all agencies have their favorites towards who they're going to stand with and who they're not going to stand with as far as outsiders. In other words, they cherry pick towards who they're going to give the harshest penalty to towards breaking the law and who they're basically going to let walk as long as they didn't actually commit some sort of a major felony like murder, etc., etc. It's a biased buddy-buddy system deal that has been going on for years and years and years towards politicians that get paid off, that get bought off, and they're in these positions to where if they don't do the right thing come the next election, they don't have a snowball chance in hell towards ever becoming elected again, towards becoming who they already are standing or remaining in the same position that they already have. Which makes it very, very unfair for the rest of the people that's not in their loop, such as myself, somebody that come back into West Tennessee in Weakley County, the very county that I was raised up in. And now you've got all these strongholds that is set up in Weakley County. And because I wasn't in the right loop, per se, I didn't get the proper protection that I should have gotten, to the point of dereliction of duty by the judges and by the judicial system here. And not only did I get dereliction of duty, David and I, but we actually got attacked. Whenever you have people in Martin PD that try to promote you as you being a homegrown terrorist in your own home county, that is an attack. They was trying to label me as me being the bad guy. Why? Why was they doing this in 2005 after that I had moved out of this area, give or take, for about 20 years, and at the time I was living in Madison County? I'm going to tell you why. It's because certain people did not like the message coming from the messenger in regards to spirituality. It wasn't a political message. It wasn't a message concerning cars or horses, or sports, or safety, or business, or politics. It was a message coming out of the Bible. And because I had ruffled up the feathers in this area of what that I had originally started out doing in the late 80s, early 90s, those seeds growed. Various people come in and strong-armed their own ideology about how that they felt about the founder of the Windmill Ministries, which basically took the Windmill Ministries that much further from the front burner all the way back to the back burner. And of course, in 2005, while I was once more on a crusade, they decided to attack me again right here in my own little hometown called Martin, Tennessee, towards falsifying files and trying to engage or embark their force upon the founder of the Windmill Ministries by promoting him as him being a homegrown terrorist, simply because he had made reference that he was going to wind up on the Channel 6 News. So whenever it comes to these bias law enforcement agencies, they just don't work that way against Juby. But they work that way against anybody that has fluttered their feathers in a local setting. Then again, you got other people that are probably more crummier than the people that they've been going up against. I say probably because I don't know everybody's situation. But because big money has come into play, I couldn't tell you the amount of times that I sat in court in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and see the same person get charged with the same crime and basically get the same treatment every time. $1,000 fine plus court, you walk. Well, what did they catch you with this time? 5 pounds of marijuana. What did they catch you with last time? 3 pounds of marijuana. What did they catch you with the last time before that? 7 pounds of marijuana. Really? All these charges are about marijuana. You get basically the same fine every time. $1,000, $1,500, $2,500, maybe a $5,000 fine. You walk. You're back out on the streets again. You get back out in the black market again towards peddling more marijuana. Again and again and again and again and again. Now, the wrong person that goes back in front of that same judge that wasn't tied into that loop. What? You got caught with 5 pounds of marijuana? Oh, $50,000 fine. 5 years minimum in state prison. Case closed. Next case, please. You see what I'm saying? They favor these judges, these mayors, these representatives in these counties and in these towns. They favor towards some more than they do others, and some of them they actually abolish. They hate. They've got old vendettas, old blood grudges. Well, he got away with coming into town and he peddled his 5 pounds of marijuana and I didn't get to sell my 5 pounds. So you've got unjust due that begins on the very front end of supposedly the judicial justice system, which is nothing justice about this. Nothing justice about this. It don't even come close to justice. What it has in play to is anarchy and raveling about who gets the fair shakes and who doesn't get the fair shakes. And somebody like myself that come into Weakley County all of a sudden if I so much as stepped on a wooden nickel or done something that I wasn't supposed to have done, I get the max. I get the long dance. I get to have to go through all the loops and all the somersaults. In other words, I get punished to the fullest extent of the law because I wasn't in their little loop. Well, whenever you bring the feds in, it pretty well puts a magnifying glass on everything and everybody. And it takes away these people's powers, such as you're looking at right there with his little pink bicycle, in which, you know, I have nothing against pink bicycle. I think it's cute. I hope my viewers think it's cute. It's a cute little bicycle. But why would you want to wear a cute little bicycle in the middle of your town being torn apart? Why would you want to wear such dinky, dorky looking clothes in the center of your town being torn apart? And why, most importantly, why would you be opposed to some sort of federal mandated orders going on in your town? There has to be a reason why that they don't want these feds in there. And the reason why is because of the reason that I just got through saying. These people have had these positions that they hold, some of them 15, 20, 25, 30 years, okay? And they have their clonies in their towns and in their counties. Don't think that they don't. It goes on all over America. It don't matter if it's on the East Coast or West Coast. It don't matter if it's in the hood of Mississippi, down in the Bronx, in your deeper cities, or if it's up in New York or Chicago. They got their favorites. They got their people that they basically do whatever that they want to do, and they get away with doing it as long as they don't do something major like commit a homicide to the point that it's obvious that somebody has committed murder. They basically can get away with murder. These people can. You know why? Because these people are all tied into the same system. They're all tied in. Well, whenever you bring the feds in, that breaches that old status of who was buddying up to who and who was paying off who and who was taking care of who. That breaches that normal that they had set up, and because it breaches it, now people like this guy here is no longer in control. Why isn't he in control? Because of this guy here. The feds has moved in. The federal agents. They're playing by a different set of rules. They're playing by the book across the board. They don't have no favorites. They're not concerned whether or not this guy has sitting in power for 15 or 20 or 25 years. They could care less about this guy and his position that he holds. A matter of fact, they actually look down upon people like this because people like this has allowed for this situation to grow worse and worse and worse to the point that now it has become unsafe for the rest of the people in that area. Same way with Chicago, same way with New York. I'll give 2 thumbs up to the mayor. I guess it was the mayor in Atlanta that brought in the National Guard that realized that things was getting out of hand in that town. I give her 2 thumbs up because whoever it was, the mayor there, done the right thing. But all these other people, okay, they know that they should be shamed. They should be disgraced because of chaos, anarchy, pain, suffering, misery. Basically like Baghdad. You go up into Chicago and there's places, there's communities in Chicago that's like third world country. It's like Baghdad. You hear popping and guns going off day and night. You hear ambulances and people screaming and hollering and suffering. And if you go down to the morgue, it's full all the time. The morgue is just full all the time. It's a disgrace whenever it comes to managing law and order. Law enforcement means you enforce the law, and you just don't enforce the law with the people that's greasing your palms, but you enforce the law with the poor man, the uneducated man, the man that's not fortunate enough to have to sleep out on the streets. You enforce the law for everybody. The law includes everybody. Well, whenever the feds come in, it breaches that agreement. And plus it makes them look bad. So naturally, they don't want to look bad. And they don't want to lose control of who that they've been favoring towards all this time, towards who gets away with this and who goes to jail for stepping on a wooden nickel. They don't want to lose control. So naturally, they don't want the feds coming in and taking over. That's exactly what Donald Trump was talking about whenever he ran for office the first time, towards draining the swamp. That's how you drain the swamp. You pull up your sleeves and you bring people in there and you figure out what's actually occurring on the ground. I don't know if people know this or not. Some of them do, some of them don't. But the way that we won our Revolutionary War pertaining to George Washington was simple and clear, which was George Washington had people hired as being homeland spies, of knowing who was doing what in what area, in what city, in what town, in what state. That way, George Washington could embark upon to his tactics of what he needed to do, where he needed to do it at, and when did he needed to do it. If George Washington did not regain control over this country the way that he did, in having legs, eyes, ears on the ground that was reporting back to him towards knowing what was going on in certain areas, George Washington never would have won the war. And we to this day would still be ruled by a tyranny of kingmanship coming from England of George IV or whoever he was towards ruling this country over here. It was only Mr. Washington that knew how to attack various areas that he could infiltrate on, of knowing what was going on and where it was going on. And that's basically the only way that Trump is going to be able to get a handle on these towns and on these cities and on these little country suburban areas, towards gaining control of those areas, is to bring in these agencies that basically work like spies, that are not biased one way or the other. They play by the book. And that's basically the only way that you're going to straighten this mess out right now, that is obviously so entangled with unjustfulness, it ain't even funny. It is so corrupt, from the church house to the courthouse, all the way up to places in the White House, that it is absolutely, I'm really surprised. Well, I'm not surprised. The pain and the suffering and the hardship that has fallen upon to the American people, I am not surprised at all. As a matter of fact, I'm really surprised that it hadn't already done hit on this level 4, 5, 8, 10, 12 years ago, because of it getting so unruly and unjust. But whenever the Supreme Court done what they done, and then other matters has taken place here in America, yeah, you have basically opened up a can of whip ass, coming from the devil himself, that basically God lifted that umbrella of protection and said, okay, Satan, you want to be the one that's out to kill, steal, and destroy? Do your job. And basically, Satan has been leashed up onto society in bringing all this to a head now. And now we get to see what's really going on in the fundamentals of not only your bigger cities, but your smaller ones and your smaller towns too as well. Whenever you have backwoods, back alley judges, backwoods, back alley attorneys, you have a system that is corrupt and unjust. And that's not only in your bigger cities, but also in your smaller residential areas too as well. And that corruption has to be drained or taken out or eliminated. If not, it's just going to fester and get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's all based around greed and money and people not wanting to give up on their positions, and they like being praised, or being the mayor, or being this councilman, or being that. Oh, they take on, they pat one another on the back, and they shake hands at church, and they put on their big nice suits and drive their nice Cadillacs and their big Tahoes and their utility vehicles and live in their nice important homes. They basically go around bragging on each other and basically worshiping each other. It's a form of worship. Boasting upon each other. Oh, brother so-and-so, we're so proud of him. He's been in office now for 18 years. We just don't know what we would do without him. Well, who are you talking about? The guy walking around with the pink bicycle? Yeah, he's all right. He sways a little bit towards the, the people that blend in a little differently, that live alternative lifestyles, but that's where he gets his income from, and they like him. Well, sure they like him. Well, absolutely they like him. Especially whenever he whispers into the judge's ear and says, this one here is mine, and whatever he or she does, be lenient on them. And the judge looks at the mayor and says, yes, sir. Yes, sir, your counsel. Yes, sir. So it's a buy-off deal towards who you know. It's sad. It's a banana public, but it's just not as open as the banana public. In other words, they're still operating on the same format that banana republics operate on, towards who's the biggest guy in town, who's the one with the deeper pockets, who's the guy that's been in that particular seat or in that particular area the longest, who's the one that's in charge. It just so happens that your third world countries are more abrupt about how that they handle situations, to where over here in America they're a little bit more discreet about it. But it's still operating on the same level of injustice towards not necessarily what you know, but who you know. And of course, if you're out of the loop, and you say something about this guy because of his pink bicycle, they'll scorn you and run you plumb out of town. And it don't matter what reason that it may be. If you say something about this guy's tie, or the way that this guy presents himself to the general public, They'll scorn you, ridicule you, won't have nothing to do with you, boycott you, and try to ruin you. It just hasn't happened to Juby, the guy that's talking to you right now in behind the camera, but it happens across the board, all over this country, every single day, in some form or fashion. That's why they don't want the feds coming into their area. Thanks again. Good luck to all of us. Shalom. See ya. Bye.